Today, I'm going to talk about 3 things that I feel caused my photography business to fail. That said, I am still doing it a little bit, but not nearly at the level that I used to be. Before I get into that, I'll give you a little context about like my history with photography and all that. In the mid '90s, I was working for a dance company as like company manager, road manager. It was great, but I needed to go figure out what I was going to do with my life because that just wasn't it for me. I decided that I was going to go to school for photography. I always had a camera with me. Initially, I wanted to go to Temple. I understood that they had, an excellent communications program. I wanted to be a photojournalist. I wanted to travel the world, telling stories of like marginalized communities, etc. But at the time, 4-year programs were just simply not in the cards for me. So I found a 1-year program that offered a night course or a night program. So I did that. I did that from, September '96, graduated in May or June of '97. And then after about a year or so after graduating, I just quit photography altogether. I was in a relationship and I just didn't see a path forward for me with that. So sold a little bit of gear I had, which was just a couple Canon, a couple of AE1 bodies, some lenses, and maybe an on-camera flash. I guess maybe somewhere around 2006, somewhere thereabouts. I was a produce manager for a local grocery chain. My store manager was also into photography. He got into it for the technology. He was, into like digital cameras and stuff. And at that point, I only had experience in film. So, we got chatting, and he was, trying to convince me, maybe convert me into digital photography. And I'm like, oh, hell no, man. Like, I'm a purist. I need full control, none of this autopilot crap. So he let me take it was either like a 10D or a 20D, let me take it home for a while and kind of play around with it. Obviously, I quickly realized that I still had full control over, all the settings and stuff like that. So it's like, okay. I wound up buying that off him, and then that kind of put me on the path to, to get into doing more photography. Inevitably, I wound up actually buying a proper lighting kit. I guess it was I got like 3 Alien Bs, like 1600s, I think they were. And I guess in March of 2007, a friend of mine at the time had a dance company. He needed some promo shots. I'm like, sure, yeah, I got the equipment I'm not using. Let's do it. Did a shoot for him. The concert series he was doing, the marketing people wound up using my image as like the anchor for all the marketing for that program. So I was like, yeah, hell yeah. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm a dance photographer now. I start working with, probably shooting with him a little bit more. And then he was rehearsing out of a dance studio. So I start working with the dance studio, like the teachers, and then also, a more formal arrangement with the studio. Summer of 2007, Royal Ballet was coming to Philly. They were doing Romeo and Juliet at Swan Lake. I reached out to the PR manager at the venue. I said, hey, I'm a dance photographer. I'd love to come and do this pro bono. She said, great. The schedules weren't working out, so then I wasn't going to shoot it at all. I said, oh well, whatever. And then I was at work as a produce manager for the grocery store, and I got a phone call from the PR manager, and she says, hey, my boss says I need a photographer at the Mann Center tonight. Royal Ballet are doing the final performance of Swan Lake. Can you do it? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I went, and I guess probably about halfway during the performance, like I knew in that moment that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It was the first time I ever shot, a proper ballet. I worked with the dance studio, doing like Nutcracker, but nothing on a professional level. And I was, completely enthralled in it. I mean, I guess, in the context of ballet, like, that's a hell of a performance to kind of cut your teeth on. Like they're, one of the premier ballet companies in the world. So that kind of set me on my path. I'm like, I don't want to do, I don't want to do kids portraits. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Like, this is what I want to do. So I kind of felt early on that I was on the right path. Like that, I was meant to be doing photography. So it was never really a question. I just kind of, kept pushing forward, etc. And, over the course of, over a decade, I had an amazing career. I traveled fairly extensively, internationally. I was published internationally. I worked with some of the top names in ballet. Amazing experiences, amazing opportunities. But then I think, I experienced like a confluence of, or confluence, whatever. A lot of different things all came together at once that kind of put me on I guess like a downward spiral, both professionally and personally. I was going through a divorce, from my first wife. Some point during that, I got remarried. I had a third child, and I was just making some bad business decisions, which I feel inevitably caused, my business to crash and burn. I think all in all, it was a really good career. In hindsight, I'm not terribly happy with kind of how I left when I stopped doing like commercial studio stuff. I think I was burnt out. My heart wasn't in it anymore. I think that reflected in not only the work I was creating, but also in the client experiences. There's the context for you. And now I kind of jump into, I think, like the three major things that caused my business to kind of like ultimately fail. I think the first thing is, and this is, a pitfall that I feel a lot of creatives find themselves in, is not treating the business as a business. I think many of us kind of go into these endeavors strictly from the artistic side of it, because we're taking this passion of ours and trying to flip it into a sustainable business so we can earn a living and keep doing that thing that we love to do. But a lot of us don't have that business acumen. We're creative minded, and it's not always a common thing that you automatically have the creative plus the business. Generally you'll have one or the other, and if you're going into a creative thing, it's more likely have the creative thing, and then you have to kind of figure out the business stuff as you go. And I think that's where a lot of creatives also kind of fail in this, where they either never acquire that business acumen, or they just don't put enough focus on learning the business side of running a business. So inevitably, if you don't treat your business as a business, it'll stay a hobby forever. And you know what? If you're not looking to have this be sustainable or kind of derive your income from doing this, then like cool, keep at it. Like if you've got like some other kind of gig that provides for your bills, provides for your family, then cool. This probably isn't the video for you. If you want to turn your passion into a thriving, sustainable business, then you have to treat it as a business from day one. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the minute you decide that you're going to turn, whatever your craft is into a business, you don't have to necessarily register it as a business from day one. Like you can operate as a sole proprietor, for a long time, but you need to start creating systems and processes and all of that stuff. And again, looking at it and treating it as a business from go. Don't have to have everything figured out, ahead of time. The more you can kind of have an idea, the better. Just having that mentality from jump is integral to the success of it. Now that is a perfect segue into, I think, second reason why my business failed, and as equally important as the first one here. and that is not having a plan. For me, photography was an exit ramp from corporate world, from corporate America. But that was my only plan. My only plan was to take pictures and have experiences, create beautiful art, and try to eke out some kind of living. That is a recipe for disaster. And I'm not saying that my business was a complete disaster. At the end, I feel it was. It wasn't sustainable. So I had no marketing or advertising strategy. I would just post on social media and hope that somebody else sees it and wants to hire me. You can probably figure out how well that worked. I had no financial goals outside of just trying to figure out how I was going to pay my bills, month for month. Forget about saving up any kind of emergency fund. Forget about saving for retirement or, any kind of future or my kids' college. That wasn't even a thought, which I'm half embarrassed to admit. There were no plans to grow or scale a business, let alone have it be sustainable for any length of time. The saying goes, failing to plan is planning to fail, which, I think by and large is what happened to me. Again, that might kind of seem or sound kind of heavy-handed, because I'm really only sort of looking at the last few years where things kind of got really, really bad. But the reality is, while yes, I did create amazing art. Yes, I did have these amazing experiences. Yes, within the context of the dance world, for a long period of time, I was a household name throughout the country and then elsewhere. But unfortunately, notoriety doesn't pay the bills. I can't, go to my electric company and say, here goes my notoriety. Am I good for this month? It's just, it doesn't work that way. I didn't have any kind of plan, and that's I guess business 101. I would say the third thing that likely caused my business to fail was not continuing to grow. I didn't really grow creatively, and by that I don't necessarily mean kind of exploring other genres. Even within what I was doing, I didn't really experiment as much as I probably should have. I was content or complacent in what I was creating. I found my groove, and I found a look that worked for me, and I wrote it. I wrote it right into the ground. By the end, my work felt mundane and redundant, and by and large, when I would go into shoots, with very few exceptions, and those exceptions being the few times I was actually working with friends, and even within that, those times I was getting enjoyment out of the interaction with friends and not necessarily what I was creating. But by and large, when I was in a shoot, I was almost looking at the clock, anticipating the shoot being over so I could just be done. And that's not good. I think that mindset, that mentality, that mind space affected not only the quality of my work, but also the quality of my client interactions. When I think back to the peak of my career, my most inspired period, I was always up. Every morning I get up just hungry and I had the fire and was always wanting to attack, always wanting to see what new opportunities or experiences I can pursue. And that carried over in the shoots. Even if I was just simply in my studio creating with clients, I'm not even not even necessarily having to just kind of go somewhere, but just in my studio, I was always up. I was always on and always just fired up, ready to attack. And my clients felt that, and there was an exchange. And that's kind of what carried me from shoot to shoot, and what I think helped, I don't want to say grow my business, but helped get more clients, was not just the work, although my excitement showed in the quality of work I was creating, but my interactions with the client, and the client's parents. It was just a whole thing. By the time I stopped doing studio work, that was gone. I was pleasant, not very conversive, because I didn't really want to be there. My what I was doing, I had my bag of tricks, my lighting stayed the same, and I had, a set number of poses that I would tap into, and I was really just simply uninspired, and unfortunately, it showed. There was really, again, I think by that time I was just done. I was tired of the hustle. I was tired of the grind. I think I was just simply burnt out and tired of the whole thing. These three things, the first two especially, are things that I'm now taking with me into this new career path I'm charting, into, documentary filmmaking, video production. That's all I got. This is my third time doing this. I'll see you in the next one.